My name is Wayne Roberts. I'm running for the 161st Legislative District. That's southern Jasper County and northern Newton County. I served 4 years in the U.S. Air Force from 1966 to 1970. I was a police officer for 43 years from 1971 until 2014. I retired as the Chief of Police here in Joplin. I served as the Director of the Missouri Department of Public Safety from 2015 to 2017. I received my MBA from William Woods University. Let me just say that in all the time I was in law enforcement, I never wore civilian clothes. I wore a uniform. I was very proud of it. The downside of that was that after I retired, I had trouble dressing myself. So if you see me out on the street, my clothes don't match, it's because my wife didn't give it to me before I left the office. My priorities are clear, and they will come first. First, I am pro-life. All Republicans are. But let me tell you that that's not a position for me, it's a belief. I'm not opposed to choice, but choice occurs when two people choose to engage in voluntary sexual intercourse.
Amen.
I believe that life begins at conception. That's a belief. As a police officer, there was only one justification for taking life, and that was self-defense. In that regard, if a decision has to be made between a mother and a child, it is the mother's decision, hers only, with consultation with her doctor. But beyond that, there is no justification for taking another life. We don't take the life of a child after they're born, so what difference does it make whether they're outside or inside the womb? It is still a life. I'm not telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body. What I'm saying is what you cannot do to the body of another.
Amen.
I've been seated across the table from rape victims. So what I'm saying to you, I'm not taking it lightly. I can't imagine the horror of having to carry to term a child that's a result of rape. I can't imagine. On the other hand, when that child is born, we would not take its life. So why would we take the life prior? I can't justify that, despite that horror.
Amen.
And two faces come to mind right quickly. So I know what I'm saying. I know what I'm asking of you. And you cannot take that kind of thing lightly. Secondly, I am pro-Second Amendment. Everybody will talk about it. Sadly, not all of our elected officials seem to understand the purpose of our Constitution is to protect the American people from its own government.
Right.
Justice Hugo Black served on the Supreme Court from 1937 to 1971. He said this: there are absolutes in our Bill of Rights, and they were put there by people who knew what words meant and meant them to be absolute. Shall not be infringed is not ambiguous language. So how do you interpret that differently? Well, you go to law school, I guess, because I can't figure it out. No offense, Brian and Bill. I'm a constitutional originalist. I think the language contained there does not require interpretation. The Second Amendment is so uniquely American that it is part of our worldwide identity. You will not find that kind of amendment or that kind of constitutional inclusion anywhere in history or anywhere else in the world. It is unique to us. I've frequently taken oaths to support and defend our Constitution. It's an oath, not some agreement that you can break based on opinion or circumstance. The Second Amendment is not about guns for me. I'm not even really a gun advocate. It's about the Constitution and the zealous protection of it. It is the Constitution, and I will defend it. I'm pro-fiscal conservatism and limited government. We should not spend money we don't have, which means we're going to have to make tough decisions about how to spend the money we do have. The more regulations we create, the less freedom we have. One directly determines the other. I'm going to quote the Supreme Court again. Justice Louis Brandeis served on the court from 1919 to 1939. He said, they, the makers of the Constitution, conferred as against the government the right to be left alone. The most comprehensive of rights and the right most valued by civilized man. And the last administration makes it very clear what happens when executive overreach becomes legal.
Right.
I am pro-public safety. When bad things happen is not the time to start getting ready, and nobody knows that better than Southwest Missouri. Public safety must always be properly trained, properly prepared, properly equipped. Anything less is irresponsible government. I'm pro-education. I strongly support economic development and the creation of new jobs, but we need people who are properly trained and prepared to take those jobs. Our children are our future, and education is the cornerstone of their success. I'm pro-transportation. We're in the middle of the country. Everything that transfers on our roads, into our state, in or out, has to be on our roads. And finally, I believe that our Constitution says exactly what the makers intended and does not require a lot of interpretation. Governing a free people is a conflict on its face. The Constitution was intended to protect, preserve, and maximize our freedom by limiting government. Clearly, then, that same government should not be free to circumvent those protections by manipulating the Constitution through interpretation. My only campaign promises are this: I will always abide by my oath. I will always listen to the people who elected me. I will vote in their interest based on conscience and Republican values. I will always be willing to explain, and I will always be willing to be held accountable. The word politician has come to mean something distasteful. It should not. There's a lot of people in government who are there who are sincere. I do have an opponent in general. I would appreciate your support in that, and I'd be honored to receive your vote in November. Are there any questions? I appreciate it. Thank you.